tout le monde. Welcome everyone to the poetry reading series presented by the Centre des Arts de Stanstead. My name is Shelly Pomerance, and this is my first English poetry reading with the Centre des Arts de Stanstead. And we did a French reading a couple of weeks ago, which was lovely. As you may already know, we alternate events. We have poets who write in French and those who write in English, kind of at a 2-week alternation. Today's event is in English and features 2 poets from the Eastern Townships, Marjorie Bruhmuller and Tanya McIntyre. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of how this event is going to unfold, and I will give the poets a proper introduction, I'm going to pass things over first to Gabriel Safdie, who founded this series. It was his brilliant idea, and he also programs the English language events. Gabriel, it's all yours.
Very happy to welcome you all to the Centre des Arts de Stanstead, the poetry series. I think it's wonderful to see you all, and we are well on our way into a kind of second season, really. I'm very happy to see you both, Tanya and Marjorie. Tanya, we go back some way. We know you so well as a visual artist in Stanstead. You've been part of our Centre des Arts de Stanstead through your exhibition there, and we even have your work hanging around Stanstead right now. And I'm very happy to see that your poetry has evolved as much. You're going to be in that anthology that I've been hearing so much about from Louise and from Louise Abbott and from Angela Loic. That I think will be launching, according to Luce, I think it's in March. So and also there's the Shoreline Press that you're both connected with. I think you're going to be published in that. So Marjorie, it's wonderful to see you as well. And I must say, you're everywhere in poetry. You have so many groups that you're part of, and so on. And I would want to mention also that the haiku event that Angela Loic is going to be doing on an evening event at 7:00 on the 20th of February, we'll be on, and I think that's nice to mention that. So I invite you all to attend that one. And so I think you'll be reading some haiku, but I think your poetry has been around for a long time, many periodicals and magazines. So listen, it's great to see you both. Good to see everyone. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Just before I introduce Tanya and Marjorie officially, I just want to give you a few details about how this is going to work. We're going to keep all mics and video off during the event, just so we can focus on the poets. But after the reading and after we have questions from you and from me, I'll ask you to open your cameras and open your mics, and at the end we can have a little exchange and say hello and say au revoir until the next time. If you have any questions or comments during the event, and I've been to a couple of Zoom poetry events where people put their spontaneous reactions and comments right into the chat as they were listening. It was very, very nice. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And when the poets are finished reading, I will relay your questions to the poets. And if there's, of course, if there's time at the end of the reading for questions, and I might even throw in a few of my own. So just remember that we'll all be opening our mics and cameras at the end, so we will connect then. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 2 poets who you're going to hear today. Tanya Jane McIntyre is a native of the Eastern Township. She lives in the Ogden-Stanstead area, and she was a visual artist before coming to poetry, and she still is a visual artist as well as a poet. She holds a fine arts degree from Bishop's University, and you can see her multimedia artwork at tanyamcintyre-art.com. And I went and looked at it today and really enjoyed it, looked at it this morning. Tanya's poems are going to be featured in a soon-to-be-published anthology of 24 women poets from the Eastern Townships. And her first collection of poetry will be released in the fall of 2021 by Shoreline Press, which is based in the Townships. She's currently pursuing training in Holistic Biographical Counseling based on the teachings of the philosopher and visionary Rudolf Steiner. And she also creates beautiful gardens. And now Marjorie Bruhmuller's poems appear in literary journals across Canada and the US. She has written 2 books of poetry, The Bell You Hardly Hear, published by Ecstasis Editions, and Back Porch Haiku from Les Éditions des Petits Nuages, which won an honorable mention in the 2020 Marianne Bluger Awards. She has just finished a novel and is now working on another collection of poetry. Marjorie also serves on the executive of Haiku Canada and is poetry editor for Shoreline Press. She lives in Milby, which is in the Lennoxville, Coaticook area. And I would like to welcome both of you, Marjorie and Tanya. Thank you so much for being here. Both poets are going to read for about 20 minutes each. Marjorie will read first, to be followed by Tanya. So with no further ado, Marjorie, it's over to you.
Thank you, Shelly. And thanks, Gabriel. It's a fantastic series. Great to have some poetry in these times, strange times. So I'm going to start off with The Bell You Hardly Hear, my first book. So I'll just read. I'm going to read a few from this book, and then I'll read some from the haiku and a couple of new poems as well. So, Dear Sasha, I'm writing this from the balcony. Someone across the way is singing loudly in Italian, and from up here it feels like everyone is listening, the whole city. The all-nighters, moms tucking babies into bed, couch potatoes, firemen looking up in the midst of their poker game, the cops on a beat or cruising downtown, light bulb changers and floor polishers, a drunk at the bar, an old woman in a home who is talking to her son in New Orleans, the air traffic controller in the tower biting his pen. Even the moon, his head tipped to one side. Yes, even the moon seems to be listening. And as the guy bellows out his first happy tune since I've lived in this place, the dog's ears perk up and the cat moves onto the radiator to get closer to that echoing sound. And the buildings pass it on like backup singers. Just one song, just one happy song can do that here. Change everything. Flip the coin of the heart, give you the courage to lean out over the night and listen. And the next one is, it's for the dog lovers out there. It's called A Well-Trained Poem. Before lunch, I will walk my poem down the road. Let it sniff at the base of trees, call after it as it starts in chase of some small creature, following its instinct to go off the path. Check the woods, shadow between the trunks. Indignant, my poem lifts its leg on invisible borders, growls at whiffs on the wind, barks at freshly dug holes, rolls in cow patties and dust, smiling. And sitting on the steps back home, it licks its lips, beats its tail, quivering for a pat on the head, another throw of the ball. Spend a lot of time at a country house it's a cottage, as a sort of writing retreat. And this is one of the many poems from that place. It's called Flash Storm. The storm circles around the lake, and I take shelter under an old birch, protecting my copy of Blake's The Book of Tell in the pocket of a borrowed raincoat. Wind thrashes every leaf and rain pours down. Thunder rolls against the pinnacle, echoing and grumbling away into the distance. And then, as if Thor had forgotten to switch off the lightning, the sky, lake, trees, mountains, even the air blazes so brilliantly, so golden. It seems to me, looking out from a dripping hood, that Apollo, riding wildly across the sky in his 4-horse-drawn chariot, is reaching down through the cumulus to us, to save humanity from our self-inflicted apocalypse. But once home, my husband, watching from the cozy cottage window, is convinced it was just a break in the clouds. Oh, this is slightly gruesome, just to let you know. It's called Winter in the Garden of Eden. I can see how it happened. A man under the stars, his back against a tree, watched the silver-curled horns of a 4-legged creature strut past him in the moonlight. And as he hunkered into leaves, shivering, he coveted the white warmth of the plush wool on the body and devised a method to steal it. He chipped a flint blade, captured the sheep and slit its throat, its screams echoing down the valley, spilling the iron stench of blood into damp night air. Hands warm from the butchery, he hoisted the pelt over his shoulders, and the deep, soft heat, like that of a woman's skin, penetrated his bones, loosened his muscles. He slept like a king before kings, dreamt of fire and the wheel. And this is what I like about poetry is you can have a little vacation. Just go into a poem and stay there for a while. This is from a trip to Hawaii. It's called Wild Play. The lump on the horizon is not an island in the mist, but a humpback whale spouting as she heaves the tonnage of her dark body from the sea and thrusts her torso forward. She arcs perfectly, then dashes the waves, slaps her black fins on the surface as she sinks and rolls, then blows her cloud again. I squint into the sunrise, wanting more, but she twists back beneath the blue, her scrimshaw tail swallowed up by froth, the scroll of the tide broken just for a moment by her joy. Okay, and almost forgot this. Imagining you here on the shore, sailing off the coast of Greece. My camera cannot emulate the crisp white houses along the shoreline, across so much sea. The blue is so deep it pours over the lip of your soul. People's lives strung out along the shore like pearls. Soon they are your family and you are theirs. They wave from under lush trees, olives in their fingers, baskets on their arms, and everyone, those in bobbing boats or fishing off the pier, in restaurants, leaning in to watch you pass, or from a kitchen window up the hillside, a woman looking out from a sink of dishes, a sudsy hand reaching up, her ruddy smile caught in the rays of sun, and you wave back. Mama, you whisper to the stranger, her dimples deepening as she slaps her aproned heart. And as the coast disappears into the swell of night and the low stars of people's lights switch on, you feel a whole galaxy is yours, a family, that long lost relatives are still waving across the channel, the strait, the ocean, the sky. And I'll read a little bit of haiku. This is from my second book, of poetry. It's called Back Porch Haiku. And I'll read them twice because they're short and hard to hear. A white crane lifting away from the earth. A white crane lifting away from the earth. This is very true right now. 3 deer in the road, rush hour. 3 deer in the road, rush hour. We see our garbage man and our plow. That's about it. In the mud, a perfect footprint, not human. In the mud, a perfect footprint, not human. Last boat on the lake, catching nothing but rain. Last boat on the lake, catching nothing but rain. She pats the plush seat cushion, missing the cat. She pats the plush seat cushion, missing the cat. Even in my darkness, the Milky Way. Even in my darkness, the Milky Way. This has a few illustrations in it as well. Can't seem to find any, but there. It's illustrated as well. And I'm not sure how I'm doing here, but I think I have time for this one's called, oh, maybe I can put it up here just a sec. I'll see if I can put it up here. Oh no, I'll just do this. Cold Comfort, it's called. After my death, the short poetic funeral, they will lower the box of ashes, perhaps, into my new home turf. Throw a rose or a peony on top, blow me a kiss, and shovel on the earth. I will wait until everyone wanders back to their cars and heads off to the church hall on the next hill to take some refreshment. Soft sandwiches filled with pepper cream cheese or tuna. Tea, coffee in squares. Hopefully someone will think to bring a flask. I will miss them. I'll lie peacefully in the darkness and imagine the conversations. Who'd leave first? Who'd stay to wash the dishes? Who'd take the sweet vases of flowers, pink, purple, blue, and hold them on their laps all the way home? Once I'm sure everyone is gone, I'll rise up through the fresh dug soil, a ghost, to see how earth looks from the other side, how vibrant the grass is green, how high the trees, and infinite the sky. I'll stop by other plaques, headstones, to see if anyone is there, call out their names, and lie in the mowed moss that grows amongst the graves, light-headed with all the glare. After sunset, I'll journey farther afield, say goodbye, kiss my loves gently, hug my friends, sit by the lake to watch the bats veer into the night and the stars burn. I'll dive down one last time into the deepest water, using my sleek, feathery wings as fins. And this is called Leaning into Dusk. We wait for the fire to catch, the clouds to burn red, watch the smokes ascent, the planets leaning into dusk, the younger stars sneaking home for the night. The loon lets loose her quivering spell as she gathers her brood to the pond. Light vanishes into sparks, stories, laughter, buries itself in dewy grass, and spread by the moon leaks a mercury surface onto the lake. We glow, our knees and feet twitching with mosquito landings, an escape pop from the campfire. We're branded with constant heat, with a deep chill on our backs, like trees, not expecting to lose our leaves in the fall. So I think that's it for me. And like you, I am really looking forward to hearing Tanya's poetry, which is extremely beautiful and stays ringing in your head for a long time, like her art. So here's Tanya McIntyre. Yay.
Well, thank you so much. It was absolutely stunning. It's such a really not muted. Really an honor to be with you here today, warming this bitter January. So thank you, Gabriel and the Stanstead Arts Center and everyone who brought us together. I'll begin with one called Ebony Jewel Wing, which is a damselfly, for those who might not know. Our mother tongue did not have a word for how the river wore away the stone without meaning to, for the shadows made when August fell through the leaves, for the dirt, the taste of it, that home was built on, for the one small handful of words that make a stranger not a stranger, for the shattered emerald body of the ebony jewel wing, born only a fortnight past, for the memory of a memory, for how you long to come to a full stop that is not death. Corollary. There are things one learns to love, like the bitterness of liqueur, the color of steeped hibiscus while waiting at a table by the window for a lover. Like the bitterness of wind in October, the cold at the deep end of your lungs, how it gathers in a furious swirling, seeds that are not for now, promises not meant to be kept, leaving you alone in the dark with the little you have said yes to. There are things one learns to love as requisite for dreams, dreams that when the waters recede, an island will reveal itself not to be an island, that the petals will fall to reveal a more perfect flower. Here's one called Morning Decrescendo. Paeans to the flighted, the finned, the muzzled, the nameless stirring dissolve. Music came from animals, hooves beating, cementing ground, crickets clicking, the thrum of wing, the first bird of day doing a small and useful thing, ironing a shirt, evening the seam. I think how history is a mural, a folding screen we press against, a stretched out accordion and we the bellows read, so little to do with individual lives. How on mornings like this, the air swims and I, for a second, breathe, calm as one who has lost the last round, laughing like a Buddhist gone demented, at the rhythmical revving of a dragonfly's engine, at the purple finch's repartee, at fate, even ours. The poems I will next read are from a forthcoming collection called Agrarian Ruins and Remnants of Desire. That the theme of them is my early years, I would say. They'll begin with one that has two titles, The House or Prelude. It begins with a quote from The Auroras of Autumn by Wallace Stevens. An ancestral theme, or as a consequence of an infinite course. The flowers against the wall are white, a little dried, a kind of mark. What lived in the walls left arms to hang in resignation, hemmed by the rustling calico. The sill was scattered with the wire legs of flies, but in May by the door were newborn shoots of sumac. I skinned their velvet stems, leaving only the skeleton. In the distance was a figure no one could name. 2 black willows remained after the hurricane. One arched back in its declension, a hand receiving its pasture. Under a simmering parasol, a threshold of trees, wedded wood, a pall of leaves, witness bearers. Even our road was like that. One called Weather Vane. At the edge of the field, the house, barn and sheds behind, 12 panes each of window glass, shutters long lost. Clapboard the color of goldenrod before gone to seed, hollyhocks against barnboard to the south. Floorboards sawn from the pines, northeast the swamp of cedars, latch door to the cellar between the doors, to the hall and the room you were born in. Cellar cupboard holds pickles no one dares to eat, trap door leads to nothing. Shed chamber stairs and old iron that once was part of something you have to walk on to get to the spider the size of a saucer that wraps up another horsefly. Door of the front bedroom closet won't stay shut through the night, not even with a nail you have driven in and bent up and around. Sound of the poker reaming the ashes, but no one is in the kitchen. By the hedge at the end of the dooryard, where you fed corn to crows, the Harris 333 shines like an apple on a stick at the fair. The Clevis pin and the wagon with the moth-chewed pillow from the Chesterfield. Late afternoon sun between boards of the haymow, no calves in the pen. Hayrake rusts by the blackberry bush, water troughs won't fill. Tin on the milk house roof creaks, weather vanes as wind blows northeast. Across the road by the pond, damselflies hover like airborne sapphire matchsticks. Cowslips bloom in tufts of grass in the brook where hooves have been. To the west, hedgerow trees filigree to the sun that sets. Nowhere is the sky so high. I had the dream again last night. I dreamed I'd said the word. You had called and I had answered. I was coming back home to you. Have a little sip of water. Here's one called Dishes. The women stood with their hands in the water, their backs to the voices, other messes, sometimes glancing at what lay out the window, or for some, not a window, but a mirror they could check in for improved or worsened lines. Sometimes for after there was an Avon hand cream dispenser in the shape of a bird or an ear of corn. The women stood with their hands in the water in all kinds of weather except lightning. Sometimes they hurried to be finished for the next task or just to sit down. Most often they were unaware of the dishes, beyond the deeming of dirty or clean. Sometimes they stood there with slow deliberation, so feelings could arrange into acceptable phrases before turning to face the room. Sometimes things broke down there and cut them in the murky water. Sometimes it would not go down even by the will of the plunger. Sometimes their rings slipped off from the soap and their hands were strange and nervous. But a thing they never ever did, regardless of their age nor the hour, was to get into bed before their sink was empty, dried, and polished. Afternoons. At the Formica table, they drink tea with canned milk, while I sit on the floor in the ramparts of furniture legs, looking for something I've not yet seen in that odd collection of books. Bound in a grainy orange, Indian herbal embossed in black, with the profile of a chief in feathered headdress. Tiny print in columns, sea-to-sea testimonials, at long last cured of palsy, dropsy, and boils by the mail-order miracle of horsetail, cleavers, slippery elm, and such. Next, the Encyclopedia of Animals, beginning with the lesser pygmy shrew. Something has spilled in the serpents, sticking the pages shut, affixing the adder to the peahen, the boa to the peacock. I did not but wish I had known then the tale of how in a transmutation of sorts, the glory of the peacock's plumage owes to its noxious snake-eating habits. Then are Anderson's stories, which I handle with the carefulest of care, so as not to let it open to the cherry-haired match girl in the seconds just before with her last flame. She has a look in her eyes that I cannot abide, in a heartless watercolor blizzard. There's one more, I think, in that vein, called Sugaring. 100-year-old maples join in a ring around our house, roots grown through the wall of our cellar. Cellar of the deep stone well, the yawling prisoner cat. Cellar of revenants, wraiths, and chains, stories they tell at night to cure anyone of sleep. In March, up from the earth, by some magical ancient osmosis, with the faint taste of bananas, sap rises with steady drips, overflowing our galvanized buckets from a hole bored in the pulpy layers with a red-handled bitstock. Then, all day, all night, the boiling. Sealed within a case we are as children, before words let us out. How dusk deepens, pressing into the belly as though day would take us with it. All day I shattered layers of pond ice with a stick, releasing more and more to the stream, until the glass music was lost and found, until I could not feel my hands. Wood smoke wound with our syrup, made its way west to the hills. A winter's end offering to forgotten gods, who watch us but never intervene. Gods whom by then have abandoned all of them but me. And now I think I'll read a poem about the English nature poet John Clare, called The Peasant Poet. It begins with a quote from his doctor. The moment he gets pen or pencil in hand, he begins to write the most poetic effusions, yet he has never been able to obtain in conversation, nor even in writing prose, the appearance of sanity for 2 minutes or 2 lines together. And yet there's no indication of insanity in any of his poetry. You wrote for hours by the lady fern, between threshing and burning lime. Untroubled you wrote on the grass beneath the vaulted sky. You belong not to whom you came from, their senses choked with sweat, nor to those who bought your peasant thoughts in literary London. Your family could not read your words bound in calves' leather, though they saved them from eviction. The year was 1820. Poems descriptive of rural life and scenery. Shortly thereafter, you were sent away to the asylum at the top of the hill. For the next 20 years, you spoke not a sensible word, but wrote your very finest looking through the narrow window, John Clare, the farmer's son, risen from the English countryside. 200 years later, botanical bringings of Clare's kinsmen scatter across the New World, roadside mullein, the corn yellow hats of SARS, towering by mid-July in assemblies. Queen Anne's frothy garment evening makes yet whiter, Timothy and bluebells, the frail columbine. I braided into garlands when speaking failed me. The last summer I too was home. John Clare, I think I know why you lost the reason, the tempo, the cadence, the pattern of speaking, why it was more than enough to paint without canvas or brush, what the ever-changing light and the chavish of sparrows told you. This one is called If I Was a Bird. I would look for twigs. I would find the best tree. I would weave a thatch, mortared with mud from puddles, the kind that cliff swallows make, like a gourd, a paper nautilus, a coracle, a whelk. In there from wingtip to wingtip, I would swathe you in a surplice of vein. I would hide you so nothing could find you, so not even the boatman would know you were there. Now, I do not know what I will do with only arms and words. Could I wrap you in a soutane of skin? Could I cover you completely? If I sang to you of the mountain springs, the lilies and the rose of Sharon, or the words I've saved all these years. Old stories tell how lions are stillborn, how they come to life when the lioness roars. I will roar to the sun like a lion. I will convince your heart to keep time. I will bellow when I am tuneless, until I know that you are still spoken, still beautiful, still mine. And I think one called Conceive of a Circle. In the palm of my hand, I hold seeds, vervain, hyssop, bergamot, vetiver, elegant signatures in ink as yet invisible. I take every care as they grow, every gentleness, moving them to slowly larger pots. From the beginning, each are distinct, each particular in its gesture, pattern, order, color, each scent its own elusive landscape, each purpose a treasure trove of lore. I think about what it means and conceive of a circle. I hold your sleeping hand as it rests under the pillow. You do not stir nor wake. In the morning, I run my fingers along the contour of your frame. At breakfast, I listen to the hum and the timbre that make the weave of your knowledge, your questions, your thoughts. I'm watchful over your intricate composition, your carriage, your pauses, specific as we walk. I think about what it means and conceive of a circle. Time for a few more. Let's see. Okay, a couple of short ones. It's a short one called Word for Love. A woman carried her washing to the river. Rocks made a shallow pool. She left the clothes there to soak. When she returned, she saw that the river had carried the clothes away. All her clothes, her children's clothes. Sometime later, an older man from the village traveled to the city. He brought back for her a large tin pan. This she could use now to soak her washing. Always then, when she had something nice to eat, she would take some to him. And this was what she said when asked to define the word for love. Make sure I'm leaving enough time at the end. Let me see. Here's another shortish one called Kingdom of Cattails. To the pond I went. You were there atop the tip of a quivering blade high above the hellebore. Save I, your vassal, whom did you mean to startle, soliloquist with wings of saffron and scarlet? Clouds allow the sun now, and on every silvered fleck, hearts burst like autumn purses of jewel weed. Tiny wisdoms light on the pond, on paper porches frogs sit, and I, only a pair of eyes with which to watch the sky. Okay, I think I have time to read a couple more. Here's a short one called About the Marvel in the Foliage of Night. A field left fallow will return to itself, to its place of easeful offering. In spite of all that is indelible in the sphere of our betweenness, the dreams lost with season, that went past but never came. When I fall asleep beside you and the hours do not break us, in that grain of a second, in the lapse before the sediment of memory sifts across, the truth of morning before the eclipse, a rose is my heart. I will conclude, I think, with a poem in 3 parts called The Wind, the Corn, and the Rock. This is an old poem. It's a lucky set of poems that just came without a lot of editing, which is very rare, a very rare gift. The Wind. In ancient days when words were leaves, when leaves were words and wind was breath, words were songs strung like jewels between the trees. When ash held grace, oak will, apple the sweetness of love, we traveled from flame to fire, led by wind, by breath, by song. When from veins of the yew, rivers rose between stones, our wellspring was lifeblood, was song. When the moon was drawn down by the willow and laid gently in the still night sea, words rose and were held in a circle of breath, in the leaves, in our words, in our song. The voice of corn spoke. Our roots have no need to grow deep in the earth, for we are held by numbers. Think of what warp means to weft, and remember, cloth is made of string. I am not still, I rustle, shaken by the wind, for there is no power in silence. Silence waits for sound, sound waits for movement. We move as one, strong because we cannot fall, as each kernel is held by the other. This I ask you, those among you who have fallen, why have you let them fall? Thus spoke the voice of corn. The rock. For the flame that flickers on the end of my match, for the fire that burns in your chest, for the great wall that stretches from my door to yours, for the rock that would make it collapse, for the goose and the flock that fell dead from the arrow, for the thread that unravels the cloth, for the space between red and green, for the hollow inside of a feather. I think my time is about up with that one.
Thank you, Tanya. Oh, I'm just going to open my video here. Thank you, Tanya, so much, and Marjorie as well. I'd just like to correct something. If you're looking for Tanya's art online, it's TanyaMcIntyre-art.com, and it's McIntyre MC and not MAC. And also something I forgot to mention is that Marjorie's work is also included in that anthology of 24 women poets from the Stanstead area, which is edited by Louise Abbott, and I believe that Louise is here with us today. She was here a little earlier anyway. I'd just like to read a comment or two. There's some wonderful comments in the chat. Sandra Stevenson writes, I love the juxtaposition of long form and haiku in one reading. She's writing to Marjorie there. She says, reminds me what each can do that the other cannot. And a little later, she wrote about Tanya's poems and said, Tanya, this is Sandra Stevenson again, Tanya, your poems are rich and thick. Each pair of lines could be written out as a short story. That's the kind of book you want to keep at your bedside. So thank you for those. Oh, excuse me, it's Louise is correcting me here. Angela Loic is the editor. And Louise Abbott has photographed most of the poets and created video poems with some of them. So that's regarding the anthology of 24 women poets from the townships. I have, feel free to put your questions in there if you have questions. I have a few questions myself, which I will ask our two poets. I'd like to know how you got to know each other, because Tanya, you invited Marjorie to join you today to read together. And how did you meet?
Marjorie and I met
Marjorie, maybe
a decade or so. Am I muted?
Yeah, I can hear you. And Marjorie, if you want to open your mic
so-
and your video as well. Okay, it's open. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Tanya.
I was at a Morris House writing group at Bishop's University, and I loved her work then. And we reacquainted about a year ago, just before the pandemic, at a poetry event at Angela Luke's in Hatley. And I was reminded of how wonderful her writing is. And then, so when I had the opportunity to do this, I immediately thought of her, and I'm so grateful that she was willing to do it with me.
Well, that your works certainly worked well together, hearing both of your work. Both of you write quite a lot about nature and about rural life. Could you talk about are there specific challenges to that kind of writing? Marjorie, you want to take that one on?
Well, sometimes you get kind of slid into a particular mold when you're writing about nature. But I think we both use nature as our background, and we're often writing about human nature. But because we're in this setting, we use it as our background because it has such an effect on our lives. You know, if we were in the city, I'm sure we would be using the city as a background, as a backdrop for our poetry.
Yeah, but
and all the noise that comes from the city. Tanya, I'm wondering if there's a connection between your work as a visual artist and as a poet.
Yeah, I think
Tanya, can you hear?
there are.
Yeah.
I can. Yeah, maybe there's a little problem with the sound. I can hear something was going in and out a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think I began to take writing more seriously about a decade ago when I saw that I was as engaged writing about my art when it was done as I was creating it. So yeah, I think most of my poems begin with an image. I was reading something the other day so interesting by a Scottish poet I love by the name of Edwin Muir, that you know, he was saying most of his work begins with an image that throbs with a kind of intensity that won't be quelled until he writes it through. And I would say that's true of me as well. Most of my work does begin with an image, I would say.
And your painting also, your visual art is also very rooted in nature as well, is it not?
Yeah, I just to pick up on what Marjorie was saying about that. There's a wonderful quote from Emerson that I think of all the time, that to every appearance in nature, there's a corresponding state of mind. And, you know, that has always felt so true for me. So I think even when I'm not writing about nature or creating work about nature, the vocabulary of nature is really kind of infused in what I do.
You sort of mentioned it briefly, Marjorie, but I'm curious about what it's like to be a poet in the townships really at a remove from a big literary or a so-called big literary scene in a city like Montreal. And I know there is a very active literary scene in the townships, otherwise there wouldn't be a book, an anthology of 24 women poets coming out. But I'd like to know a bit about your thoughts on what the advantages or disadvantages are to writing away from the so-called big literary scene in the city. Do you suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out, or quite the opposite? Are you glad to be missing out? Marjorie, you want to pick up on that?
Maybe at one time I felt a little left out because there were no ways of breaking through into the kind of clique of the city. But now after some 30 some odd years with Carolyn Rowell, who's here, with an incredible writing group, pretty much the same core people. It's been an incredible support, and through that writing group, many things have branched out, so that there have been, you know, Angela, Luke, and Steve at Luxton, and they've contributed a lot because they were from the city. They brought their contacts and everything, and that made a big difference. And I think now I feel, because of COVID also, there's room, there's Zooms, and, you know, we're connected now. I don't feel disconnect now.
Against this must help bring people together, bring poets together, and bring.
Absolutely, this kind of venue is fantastic for us out here. Thanks, Gabriel.
Tanya, did you want to add something here about being a poet in the country rather than in the city?
Yeah, well, for me as well, you know, the quiet and the solitude of the country is feels really vital to all my creative work. So but it's, you know, it's just so wonderful that we now have a publishing house in the area, and a flurry of literary activity by things that Angela Luke is organizing, who is a whirlwind of poetic activity, it seems. So that's really changed. It certainly changed my feeling of being here. I feel like I can be more settled in being here and not wondering if I should be elsewhere, because I feel as though the future will hold many wonderful things for townships, poets, and writers, all centered around that. So I'm so grateful for that.
Marjorie, is there anything you want to add about Shoreline Press?
Well, I think it's going to be a wonderful thing. I think Angela does have her finger on sort of what's going on here. She knows everyone. And that's what you have to do if you want to have a press. You have to know everyone. And yeah, I think Tanya's right on when she says we have something to look forward to in the future of actually publishing the talent that is here, because there is a lot of talent in the townships, a lot of amazing writers, and they will finally have a voice. And Louise Appett also has a big part in that, because she's filmed everyone for this book. She's made a video of the people in this book, and she also is quietly in the background organizing people and getting things done. And
Louise actually has just put a note in the chat saying that it's Studio Georgeville that's publishing the anthology of women as poets. So thank you. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that, Louise. We're going to wrap up in just a minute, but I just want to remind you of a couple of things. If you'd like to publish Marjorie's books, you can check out with leslibraires.ca, and I've put that right at the top of the chat if you're looking for that. You can keep an eye out for Tanya's and Marjorie's new books, including this anthology of works by women poets from the townships. And if you would like to watch and listen to this event again, or you want to send it to a friend, or any of the other events in this series, you can go to the YouTube channel for the Centre des Arts de Stanstead, which I also put right at the top of the chat. Or if you go on YouTube and you just put in Centre des Arts de Stanstead, the channel will come up and you can see all the events. Just one last thing before we go, and well, you can open your mics now, but I just want to let you know that on Saturday, February 13th, that's in 2 weeks at 2 p.m., Joséphine Bacon and José Aclin will read from their work. That's a French event, including from a work that they wrote jointly. And on February 20th, we'll have a haiku event with Angela Luke. That's exceptionally at 7 p.m. And on on Saturday, February 27th, Julie Bruck will join us from San Francisco and H. Nigel Thomas from Montreal. And that one will be at our usual time at 2 p.m. And I will let you all say hello, and I will wish you all a great weekend. And thank you again, Tanya McIntyre and Marjorie Bruhmuller, for being
Thank you, Shelly.
You can all open your mics and your cameras now and let loose.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, the imagery and so on, I mean, speaks very well for your internalizing whatever landscape you have. So you make you create your own language. I think both of you do, and whichever ways you do it. So I think that's what it is. You don't need to be in an urban environment to do that. And I think most poets have always done that anyway. So I think it's, and you are able to internalize a great deal and then bring it out so beautifully. I think you both good surprises in both your work and the imagism and so on. So thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah. And thank you, Tanya, for bringing on Marjorie, because we actually got to know each other better today. So yeah, very well. Anybody else?
I'd just like to say that in the chat, there were lots of comments about how sensual the poetry was and how beautiful the imagery was. So you can have a look at that.
I'm not sure about the comments appearing, during the reading though, on the screen,
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's nice to have no distraction really, and it's really.
Well, you can shut the chat if you want, so you don't see those comments there.
Mm-hmm. I have to learn something new now. So. Thank you all, and I think that I hope you can come in. Hope your French is good enough. You can come in on this in 2 weeks, because we have two wonderful poets again. And
yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you very much, both of you. And yeah, it could be very nice if you will be there in 2 weeks. Joséphine Bacon, she's a famous poet, Innu, from Pessamit. She lives in Montreal. And José Aclin is French, from France, and he's fantastic. And the link they have together is wonderful.
Yeah.
Then,
yeah.
Merci pour votre lecture.
And the haiku to be fun too. I certainly look forward to that. I'm sure you two will be on it, supposed to be on it some way. Very well. So thank you.
People would like to open your camera so we can see you. It would be really nice.
I want to thank you, I want to thank you, Shelly, for your hosting. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And,
well, we got the vacuuming done just in time before the event, so it was nice and quiet here.
Time in our history here and evolution. Thank you so much.
It's lovely to be here with all of you.
And our programmer is not here now, but
yes, she is. She's there, Luce. She's there.
See her name. Okay, well, it's of course, we're a very, very fine team, and we have to thank. And you, Diane Régimbald, thank you for your participation. You're bringing on some good stuff.
I'm happy to be there.
Luce is here now. Luce, thank you so much for your general presence. Yeah, that's our programmer, and she is the overall programmer.
And I'd like to thank Sharda Guptar for making this happen.
Of course.
Working the technology for us, because it's not as simple as it looks.
Thank you. Sharda is really looking up to. Very, very good. That she's my assistant. She's terrific. But I want to say that everything's on hold. The Safdie, the Stanstead, we're on hold. We have all these events that were planned after the one we had. Hallelujah. Leonard, after that, we were just not able to continue. So I thought the poetry at least will keep Safdie Stanstead alive and on the air right now. And I think it really is happening. So that's great. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll let you all go off and enjoy your afternoon. Stay warm.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, Tanya.
Hello.